this two-press thing, this video gallery problem. It's like, and this art and technology website problem. It's like, it's the sort of thing where there are all these trade-offs and people are kind of depending on me, but it's all set up on this sort of exchange of favors kind of thing, and that even ties into like where I'm living and just kind of other elements of kind of my life, and it's like, and also potential future interaction with different people. It's like if a person interacts with others and does some basic things for them, that like supports having an ongoing relationship. And if somebody's available to actually do tech work, for example, it helps the prospect of future tech work. And it's kind of like, if I'm not going to do this, it's like somebody else has to, or certain things will just be like off the table, or there's this causal effect chain if I don't follow through on these things. And it's like, again, it's like if I had access to another person who could assist with this stuff, it would help a lot. But that's a whole process and problem. Finding somebody who will work just based on favors for almost no money, like especially for any length of time. And it's like you can find people to work as interns, but there's a tendency for like people want to succeed, and there's this cultural process where people absorb lots of messages about chase your dreams. They see a lot of examples of different things. They read books about like power, like Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. Like some people are familiar with the items in those books, and just on television, even on Disney, like these, it's like people like trying to take advantage and so on are themes that people are kind of familiar with, and yet people want to take advantage themselves. So part of the problem is, and during the school project, it's like I tried to hire different people, but it was kind of this whole thing of like, what do you pay people, and what can they do, and what is their role. And then this gets into when you're in a position of basically being a startup phase of a company, there are questions of like who owns what, and who is like a founder who's going to own like a percentage of the company versus who is like, or have some kind of control aspects to their position, and who is just hired as an assistant, basically, like an at-will employee who's just being paid like hourly, and who's like a staff employee or whatever. And it's like, even if you're not trying to set up like a company with like stock options, and you're just trying to set up like a sort of production-oriented company where there's not really like the value of the company isn't in the company, it's just in the projects that you do, and then all the money gets distributed out, basically. But even then, it's like, it does go back to these things where it's kind of like, it gets down to this question of identity and the judgment and decisions of like what something's going to be. And that is, in general, a question in my situation. It's a question in terms of the whole education, jobs, political crisis, and it's a question in terms of humanity as a whole at this point. And it's like, I don't know, I mean, even without getting into like profoundly epic questions of humanity as a whole, clearly there is an information technology, information design, experience design, information architecture, statistics, political, economic, historical, synchronicity or related story playing out, in the sense of like the elements that I see as I see it. And I don't know like the exact nature of it all, but it's like, clearly there are major problems in education, in classrooms, in colleges, or they're, to put in a different term than problems, they're vacuums at work of different kinds, based on how it's all set up. And a lot of people are questioning how it works, and a lot of people are bringing in methods, like I talked about in this video I recorded this morning, where it's like Dan Siegel and Goldie Hawn's approach of mindfulness and neuroscience, Peter Senge's approach of systems thinking, the Myers-Briggs approach of temperament, Jungian temperament theory, thinking, feeling, intuition, sensation, introversion and extroversion, and how that ties into people's mental processes and interests, and how they take in information and make decisions. There's the shame resilience approach of Brown. There is the leader in me approach from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Franklin Covey. And all these approaches are kind of like part of this sort of like web of information and ideas. And I mean, 2 other approaches that come to mind. One is Fine Brothers' approach, which hasn't been adapted into an educational approach. It's comedy basically, but there's an educational component to it, and there's an educational component to a process of actually having teachers, mentors, actors, producers, whatever, sitting down with students or subjects, showing them like videos or some kind of material, and then asking them questions based on it that kind of elicit thoughts and feelings and responses and kind of provoke thinking and reflection. And that's what like Kids React and Teens React web series are set up around. And so that's kind of an approach too, the sort of one-on-one interactive approach, and then even making a video output of it that can be then watched by different people and be part of sort of a reaction and interaction chain is kind of an interesting approach. And that ties into like what I'm doing like myself with like recording myself, kind of reflecting myself and asking myself questions and thinking about implications of things, and then going back and watching my own videos and then kind of reacting to my own videos, as well as weaving in stuff I'm watching online and kind of trying to learn from all of it and then produce output from it. And then the other approach is, the whole Khan Academy approach is another one of these like learning approaches where Salman Khan makes all these videos where he explains all these aspects of math, economics, even like history and all these different subjects. And then along with a lot of other people who put videos online, those videos are available for individual learners to either watch, or they can be watched in the context of a classroom or whatever. And then there's also this flipped classroom approach, which I watched a couple videos about, which seems to be an approach that addresses the problem I've seen in schools a lot of times, where a lot of students are unengaged, and there's a problem of this teaching to the average student, and there are only some quote-unquote average students in the class, and then there are students who are struggling in terms of being behind, or struggling in terms of being bored, or struggling in terms of things being too easy, or all three. And it's like, even there are cases of things being too easy and people like struggling with them too, which comes into this whole temperament question of like how people process topics and information. Like I prefer learning in this very non-linear kind of a way, which is very at odds with the sort of like sequential, prerequisite-oriented approach of school, typically, including up to college, which gets into why I've dropped out at times. And I mean now is a good point to reference this article I wrote for Theories of Personality, where I kind of addressed this whole how to find fulfillment problem basically in the face of uncertainty and a lot of one's own mental processes being unconscious, and not to mention, to extend it, the concept, the whole situation being ambiguous in different ways.